On our morning show today from WRCO, we're talking with one of the 4 Grace Ambassadors. Greater Richland Area Cancer Elimination has chosen some stellar ambassadors in the past, and this year, no exception. Seth Paulson joins us for a radio visit today. Seth, thanks for agreeing to do this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you on here on the radio today. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Seth Paulson. I'm actually originally from the Dane County area, from Stoughton. Actually, that's kind of how I was able to meet my wife, Angie, or Angie Brewer originally, but now Paulson, of course. But yeah, that's where I met my wife, Angie. And I think basically, in short, our initial plan was to kind of stay in Stoughton, and but at the time I was working for the Wisconsin Historical Society. I was there for about 9 years. I was the graphic designer. That's what I went to school for, right after college. But anyways, yeah, our original plan was to kind of stay in the Stoughton area, but then I think just kind of slowly, I think we were ready to kind of come back to the Richland Center area, and because I've been to small towns around Stoughton and whatnot, but this one was definitely for me. It felt like a small town vibe. But then every time I would talk about locals around that live around Richland Center, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I mean, Richland Center is kind of one of the bigger towns around here." It's like you don't know what a small town is. So for me, it was just kind of it was just a different experience. But I've just I've grown accustomed to it, and yeah.
And your parents live in the area too, don't they?
They did, yeah. Honestly, all right. I I didn't force them. I think they just they decided to follow suit. My sister actually and her husband, they live in Janesville. But yeah, we before we all moved here to Richland Center, yeah, we were all in Stoughton. Let's see, they moved there in 1996. I think that was kind of the summer/fall of '96. But yeah. So they were almost there for a good 30 years, and then I think it was just kind of time. I think they were kind of low key, kind of looking for a retirement home, and yeah, they eventually decided to kind of I think my dad kind of had a soft spot for Richland Center because he actually grew up, or actually I'm sorry, not grew up, but he went to school here, so he would have been a road runner.
He went to the college?
Or the college here, yeah. College here in Richland Center, yeah.
Great.
But anyways, so he went here for a few years, but I think because of that, he's always had a soft spot. When they had actually taken out, when they were kind of starting to clear out from the campus, from display cases and everything, he was part of just kind of older photos, probably from the 70s and whatnot. I think he was a manager for the basketball team. I forget exactly what year, but you'd have to ask him. But yeah, so anyways, yeah, I think for him just coming back to Richland Center, I think just because of his brief stint here, and I think just yeah. So, but anyways, yeah, they seem to really like it here, and but yeah, for me, it's kind of a natural fit, but yeah, it's a nice place.
Your cancer journey, Seth, began when you were very young, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. So interesting enough, so I actually was diagnosed at the age of 18. So this was just right after I'd finished high school, and. See, that would have been, so technically the diagnosis started I was diagnosed in November 2006, but basically kind of how it worked out was, I think I was probably it would have been my first semester in college, so I was going to Madison Area Technical College. I think they now call it Madison College now. I think they rebranded a while back ago. Mm-hmm. But anyways, it was in my first... it was one of my classes, or so what was it? But yeah, anyways, that's kind of around the time frame that it was happening. But anyways, I was what was it? It was November of 2006. I was with one of my friends at the time, my best friends at the time, and we were big pro wrestling fans at the time, and I still kind of am a little bit. But to kind of paint a picture here, we were big pro wrestling fans. We loved going to concerts. We pretty much did everything together at the time, since we were best friends. And, he was it was one of my better friends, especially growing up, in high school. And that was really important, as a high school, mm-hmm. person. But yeah, so anyways, I remember, yeah, it was kind of like, it was kind of a blizzard-y day, so to speak. And so we were playing like one of the the pro wrestling games that just came out, and we had a copy, I think, at the round, because we were like big advocates. We were like playing the PS2, the PlayStation 2 at the time, and one of the new systems that came out was like the PlayStation Portable. So it would have been called the PSP. But anyways, we decided to kind of get an extra copy, or we had to get the system of the PSP of the same game, because that was like in our heads, that was kind of the logic to like unlock more characters or whatever. So anyways, that was kind of the reason why for us to kind of go to Walmart in the first place on the east side of Madison. And yeah, so anyways, we got there, we finally were able to kind of get everything that we wanted to get. And then as we're kind of, heading backwards, we're on Stoughton Road, kind of heading back towards Stoughton, and all of a sudden I just kind of get this weird pain in my chest. And for a little bit, I just kind of brushed it off a little bit. But over time, I guess I probably really couldn't, to the fact where I'm like, hey, can you drop me off at the UW Health? There was like an old location just right off of 151. It's no longer there. But yeah, that's where he had me dropped off, and I don't think I was able to see my primary care physician at the time. I forget her name. I was probably on. But anyways, yeah, he dropped me off there, and he stayed there as long as he could until the doctor came back to the waiting room. It's like, hey, thanks for dropping him off. He's in good hands. You can go home now. I wouldn't worry about it. But yeah, they did test, and I remember, I think they had me do, it was a scan, I think it might have been an x-ray, and they saw this like weird black cloud around my heart, kind of like a heart, or kind of like the chest area. And so they were really kind of like worried that I was probably going to have like a heart attack, or potentially have a heart attack. And I've never had any diagnosis before that, considering like, how young I was. And like, I'm too young to have a heart attack. That's ridiculous. So, but anyways, yeah, so because of that, they had sent a ambulance over from Stoughton Hospital, and from there, they came over. My mom was over at the clinic, and then my parents were there too. But anyways, yeah, the ambulance came over, swung by, picked me up, and I think by that time, I think the ride, in a sense, like, I guess maybe kind of leading into it, like, they had me on a stretcher and everything, but that was the first and only time I've ever been in an ambulance. But when they had put me in the ambulance, I think that was kind of like when it was like the snow was really falling down. It was like, I think it was probably like one of our first blizzards of the year that night. And I think the one thing I specifically remember, though, is like, yeah, it was, scary. It was, I guess every emotion that you can possibly think of. But I think it was mostly kind of the uncertainty, because you just don't know. But I think that's kind of weirdly like where I felt a sense of calmness, because I think I was able to calm down. I think part of it is because the crew that was kind of sitting with me in the back of the ambulance, and we were just kind of talking like we were old friends. So they definitely made the ride for me a lot more comfortable, and was able to kind of get me to slow down a little bit and just not focus on, what it was or what it is, and yeah, so they transported me to the main UW Health clinic. I forget the name of the road, but it's the big main clinic in Madison. So. And when they dropped me off, I remember waiting in the waiting room for about roughly anywhere from like 30 minutes to an hour. It wasn't that long. And they got me in, did more tests. And then I remember this was the first time that I had looked at my heart through on screen. I forget the name of the whole contraption and everything, but that was the first time I got to see my heart on screen. I thought that was pretty obscure, but at the same time, it was pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
So did a few more tests after that, and I remember just kind of waiting for the next like 20 to 30 minutes or so after that. Just laying on the bed, and then I was there with my parents were there, my sister was there. Just all my whole direct family was there, just kind of there to keep me comfort and support. And Again, there was still a little bit of uncertainty in my head, kind of circling around. But anyways, yeah, they came back and they just said, hey, we found kind of that black cloud, that kind of showed up on the X-rays, but nothing really came conclusive, and so they just felt like every other test that they had done was absolutely fine. So they ended up sending me home, and after that, I think it was the next day. It was either the next day or the day after, or that my mom had called me, and I didn't think much of it. When you see your contact, pull up on your phone and you just kind of answer the phone. I think obviously the big sign of this was a kind of a different type of phone call was when she broke down. When she answered, I'm like, hey mom, how you doing? And then she was kind of talking and crying at the same time, and that's when I knew. I'm like, okay, is everything okay? It's like, well, your doctor called me, and they said it's cancer. And I guess growing through high school, I mean, let's see, I would have been 18, so I'd have been after senior, but even when I graduated after high school, you're still kind of like kind of that, sometimes that high school mentality. Sometimes it never really leaves you. I've seen it for numerous people, and sometimes it doesn't. But at the same time, you're kind of like that, almost kind of like that kid / high school student at heart, so to speak. And for me, like, it was important just to be who I was and just enjoy the simple things in life, and that's kind of how I've always been. But to kind of and so I didn't really know like the technical stuff in terms of like, it's like I knew I was always healthy, and I never it never crossed my mind to ever think like, oh wow, maybe at the age of 18 you're gonna get diagnosed with cancer. And for me, of course, when she delivered that news, I was just I cried too, because the only thing that I knew personally about cancer was that that people just die from it. That's all I knew. I didn't know that it was curable. I didn't know anything else. I just assumed that, like, the word cancer and that's it. And it's like, really? That's it? For me? Like, I'm only 18. Like, I feel like I got so much more to live and so much more to offer, because again, my plans were in it, and I think again I was still like probably like in my first. See, I was taking 4 classes in my first year of at Madison College when I was studying graphic design, and that was probably the one thing kind of leading into the next part of the story is. I would say that's the one thing that really kind of got me through the whole experience of going through cancer in the first place was keeping my mind busy. So, and then also too, this is kind of me a little bit opening up too, and is that growing up, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and even to this day, I probably still have ADHD, but it's probably more. Sometimes I feel like it's ADD because I feel like maybe like my body isn't as like hyperactive as it once was, but it's another form of hyperactiveness and whatnot. But I had that, and then I was diagnosed with Asperger's disease, or not disease, I'm sorry, Asperger's, but they don't call it that anymore. It's high functioning autism, or like I believe it's level 1 autism. So I'm high functioning. I can maintain contact, eye contact with people, but sometimes I'll kind of look at their ear or whatever. But
pretty common, actually.
Pretty common, yeah. But I remember I feel like I'm kind of going off in like a totally different tangent, but that's just kind of who I was, in terms of just keeping my mind busy, always staying active. Even to this day, that's who I am, to kind of, keep active and not have that subtle chance for me to kind of like I do love to kind of have like my downtime and whatnot, but like sometimes like I always need to be doing something, just need to stay active. And it was the same thing, for, going through cancer is like, I think it would have definitely been worse for me if I didn't have a whole lot to do, but because I had an amazing support system with my direct family, along with my family, the rest of my family, I lived in Wisconsin, and I also had a family that still to this day, are from Minnesota, and they live in Minnesota. But yeah, so yeah.
What type of cancer were you diagnosed with then, Seth?
So we didn't actually find out, and I think it was probably a couple days later, if I remember correctly. It was. I always like to tell a story before kind of actually kind of revealing and everything. But I remember we went to the cancer. I think it was like the cancer center at the UW Health. And that was kind of I think it was like a couple of days later, or either a day or 2 days later after. But it was really quick because they wanted to meet with me very fast to make sure that the cancer hadn't spread. So I remember, we were in the waiting room, and that was kind of the first time that I got to meet some of the cancer team, along with my primary doctor, who would actually kind of serve as the primary doctor, and that was Dr. Brad Call. I remember my aunt, Andrea, or Andy, as we like to call her, she came down from Minnesota and was there with us too. And then I remember, I believe, some of my family from Madison, my Aunt Kathy and Uncle John were there. My parents, of course, John and Cindy, and my sister, Brittany, was there as well. But yeah, we're all in the waiting room. And then when we went into the actual room, with Dr. Brad Call, that's kind of when he just laid it all on the line for us, and kind of went through the next steps and everything. But the diagnosis was B-cell large diffuse lymphoma. It was non-Hodgkin's, which is a form of blood cancer. So every time I kind of tell someone, it's like, oh, what kind of cancer that? Okay, well, you get a pen and paper. Yeah, so that's kind of what it was. And I believe, I want to say I went through, it was between 8 to 10 rounds. I'm sure I probably wrote in the paper, maybe it was 10 rounds, but I always kind of forget if it's either 8 or 10, but it's roughly 8 to 10 rounds each of chemotherapy and radiation.
So when the phone call came in that Grace was asking you to be an ambassador, did you have to think long and hard about it, or what made you decide, Seth?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Wow, I really get off track all the time. But, yeah, So before we even joined Walk with Grace, we actually joined the American Cancer Society, and I didn't really think about even join in terms of joining the fight or this crusade in the battle against cancer. I mean, it was just like one of those things. Like, I felt like I was vocal about it, and I was comfortable about telling my story. And honestly, kind of going through cancer definitely made me more. Kind of brought out my extrovertism, and I think the only time I was really ever was an extrovert was probably with my friends in high school, because just like probably a lot of people, they have their own social circles and everything, and that's when you're the most comfortable around your friends. But mostly, when I was outside that group, I was mostly an introvert. But cancer in general definitely brought out that extrovertism in me. But anyways, I don't think it was probably until I had actually met my wife, when I was actually when I came back to Stoughton. I was actually kind of a little bit of a just kind of trying to understand where my career was going to head, because I graduated from Madison Area Technical College, in their graphic design program. I graduated in 2010, and I was just kind of doing odd jobs and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And one of my first jobs was I was working in the newspaper, and that was kind of my first chance, to kind of work with deadlines and everything. So I was kind of a journeyman, kind of trying to figure out this news. Like I definitely kind of liked working in newspapers. I worked in there was a newspaper in Rockford, Illinois. I did, and then. They ended up actually moving down to I think they were going down to Austin, Texas. I remember that because I remember everyone saying oh yeah, Austin's gonna be just like Madison, except just hotter. Still gonna be the Midwest essentially. But anyways, I turned that down, and then finding a newspaper job in Owatonna, Minnesota. I was there for 4 months. Things didn't work out, and ended up finding another newspaper job in where was that? It was in St. Joe, Michigan. And but anyways, I was kind of a journeyman and eventually came back, and that's kind of how I wound back up in Stoughton, because I was only there for 2 weeks, but I'm so glad I was there for 2 weeks only, just because of, like, St. Joseph is a beautiful area in Michigan. It's been a few years since I last been there, but anyways, when I came back from that, I had an opportunity to kind of do this part-time job. It was through a staffing agency, and that's kind of how I got my graphic design role at the Wisconsin Historical Society. A lot of the folks that when I did work there are, of course, a lot of them are gone. Some of them are still there, which is awesome. But anyways, that's kind of eventually how I wound back up in Stoughton. So I was living with my parents for a few months at that time, and I think it was probably, I didn't meet my wife. It was actually probably a few weeks before my birthday. Actually, my birthday was just a couple days ago.
Wow, happy birthday!
Yeah, thanks. But anyways, yeah, that's kind of actually when. So I was able to meet my wife through, I guess, family, or I should say just friends and acquaintances. I remember, just kind of growing up in high school with. They were actually about a year or two behind me. But yeah, but I remember just kind of going to their place. We'd always have bonfires and everything. That's kind of, and then of course that's where she was living. It was kind of a separate story without telling that story. But that's kind of how she kind of got into the fold, because she eventually she wound up in Stoughton because she had a job in Madison. I think she was working for EW Health at the time. But anyways, that's kind of how I got to meet my wife. But because of her, it wasn't until about a year or so later, after we were dating, that was when she had I had told her my story about how I'm a cancer survivor and everything that I had to go through, and she told me, it's like, oh, have you ever thought about maybe like volunteering? And I was working a full-time job. I felt like that was my first full true career job, with the Wisconsin Historical Society as a graphic designer. And I just kind of felt like, well, maybe, and then maybe I can do some freelance work. But for me, like, I felt like that was like, I'm busy enough, and then like any other spare time, I'll just be hanging out with friends. We'll, go out and do whatever. But she's like, yeah, have you ever done volunteer work? I'm like, yeah, I've done volunteer work before in the past, for the local churches and everything. But I never really thought about, joining in terms of like fundraising or donating, or just, in general, just telling my story, or fighting the good fight in terms of against cancer. And so because of her, that was kind of the reason why we had joined the American Cancer Society. So we did that for at least 2 to 3 years, I believe. And then I remember even though we were still living in Stoughton, that I remember that was kind of like our first year with Walk with Grace, because we knew that it was kind of like a smaller nonprofit, if you will. But so we every time we would actually help, or even though we had a team with Walk with Grace, we would still make the drive up from Stoughton, which is roughly about an hour and a half to get to Richland Center.
Well, with 14 years behind you, as a cancer survivor, things are positive. I presume you still have to go for yearly checks and things like that.
I haven't had. All right. So, well, yes, I do have my yearly checks and everything. Not necessarily not with the cancer support team or anything like that, but just to make sure that I'm just a full healthy dude, living his days. I haven't actually seen any of the cancer crew in a long time. It's probably been at least 10 years, if not more. Well, let's see. Probably around that time, roughly. I think the only thing I really ever do is go into my just to make sure that I have good blood pressure, and I guess maybe my maybe my cholesterol is a little high, but
your yearly thing. Otherwise,
yes, my yearly thing. But
But think about how life changed for you at 18. And you're a different person now as a result, I'm sure, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, it's interesting. Again, I sometimes I have to put myself in that mindset, because I remember, when I was 18, I was in, I was mostly in cross country. I was doing cross country and all that stuff. But like, Yeah, at that time, I think before that diagnosis, I just really didn't necessarily have a care in the world, so to speak. It was me, high school, my social circle of friends and sports, and I also played hockey, but I remember it was mostly club hockey. I played actually for McFarland. Fun little story. We actually made state for the club. I think they called it Teeners. That was like the highest level before you could actually, then you'd be trying out for varsity essentially. But yeah, I did that for like about 3 years in high school, and then backed out of that and managing the boys varsity basketball team with my good friend to this day, Josh Griedebeck. He was also the best man at our wedding back in 2018. I think with that diagnosis, I think it was definitely wasn't on my bingo card for sure. But the whole experience though, I feel like oddly, and maybe it is the same for others. I think everyone's story is a lot different, but it just made me oddly a better person. It kind of showed me like, and I think part of it was probably because it felt like, oh man, life can be shorter than what you make it out to be, and you just have to cherish every single moment and every single minute. And even to this day, like I'll have my bad days, and I've been depressed before too, especially kind of with the current climate of certain things, and sometimes also because I'm technically kind of unemployed right now, so I'm still kind of I'm in the search for jobs right now, but at the same time I'm also busy with my wife's business too. At the same time, she has a candle business, which is actually our team name. Before that, we just kind of went as the TIE Fighters. I believe my sister-in-law, Sarah, I believe she was the one that came up with the original name. And then I think for us, it just kind of made sense to kind of transition the team name to my wife's business name, which was Angela Rose Studios, LLC. And it kind of leads into the next segue is basically for the second year in a row, we're promoting our personalized cancer awareness candles and how it works. There's various information that you can do, but basically how it works is you can just choose your cancer ribbon color, and then any color ribbon is available, not just the ones shown in the photos that we feature on our website. And then you just choose the message, so in honor of, and that's for cancer survivors. There's I'm fighting for, which is for those currently battling cancer. And the third one is in memory of, for those who have passed away from cancer. And then we have like looks like about 10 options, or actually, 10 options. So like 9 various scents that you can choose from, or the 10th option is just and then we have like a little black or a little white box where you can actually write your name to customize it, so we can write it in for you, or you could write it for yourself depending on how personalized you want or how comfortable you are with your writing or whatever. So, and then you can just order it online. It's actually kind of a big URL address, but it's angelarosestudios.com/products/personalized cancer awareness candle. And personalized cancer awareness candle has a hyphen in between those words, so I know it's kind of a lot to take in. But honestly, I think probably the easiest way would probably just go to angelarosestudios.com, and then if you go under, I believe it's under the collections category, and then there will be a Walk with Grace section. It'll just kind of lay it out for you there. So,
wonderful, yeah.
But yeah, so I guess that was my little plug in terms of our joint adventure, and then. It was actually last Saturday. We also had our brat stand, and we had a really good turnout. We were supposed to have it 2 weeks ago, and then of course we had all that rain, so we just couldn't do it. So that postponed it for another week. But yeah, we had a great turnout, and that was our second ever brat stand that we've had
for Grace.
For Grace,
yeah.
And
great.
Yeah, this was a lot better turnout than the first time around. And I think part of it is just we're trying to be a little bit more put together, and we had brats and hot dogs, chips, soda, water, all that wonderful jazz. But yeah, it was a great turnout. And then, like I said, right now we're doing the candles, and then and then now I'm doing the ambassador stuff, and then my story is going to be in the Richland Observer, and
yeah.
Let's see. And then I did the Lone Rock 4th of July parade. Walked that and
Promoting that. Yeah, and your team will be at Walk with Grace, I presume?
Yep,
You'll
we'll
have a
be at
stand
Walk
there?
with Grace. Yep. So it's been a fun time, because and like I said before, in a sense I have done this, but in terms of the like an ambassador role or like someone actually kind of truly talking about their experiences. Like, sure, I've done that with the book and everything, but this is just like takes it up to a whole new level. But it's definitely, I would say it's great to just kind of let people know, because even though it's kind of weird, but to think, but that in a sense like in a sense I'm a veteran, in a sense like I've been so far removed, it feels like, and I hope it continues to stay that way, because I know people sometimes cancer can return, for good or bad in terms of beating it or not, but I can definitely say right now for sure that I'm still healthy and still kicking and still doing my thing.
You're looking good, man. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Seth Paulson joining us, an ambassador, one of the 4 for this year's Greater Richland Area Cancer Elimination. Remember, the walk itself is coming up on August 8th. Before that, the Survivors Captain's Night at the Phoenix Center. That's on Wednesday night, August 6th.